Hi, I'm Dan from Crafti Comics, and I just stepped into the Vactor-Verse.
I am Vactor, and this is the Vactor-Verse. Today on the show, I have a very special guest, Mr. Dan Moyer from Crafti Comics. Now, Crafti Comics, what pray tell is Crafti Comics? Well, Dan is going to tell us all about that, but just a real quick intro. They specialize in frames and displays for comic books, graded slabs, Funko Pop figures, and more. But Dan is going to tell us all about that today on the show. Dan, welcome to the Vactor-Verse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be talking about just stuff that you collect, things that we want to celebrate, share stories of. It's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk today. I wanted to start off, before we get into Crafti Comics, you were telling me a little bit before we started recording that you are a reader first. You are a comic book reader first, and then collector. So I wanted to ask, what is your comic book origin story? How did you get into comics, and what really hooked you?
Yeah, so I was started collecting comics when I was a kid. And it was one of those things where I always connected with superhero. Spider-Man was always my favorite hero. I think it was one of those things of connecting with the guy that wasn't the prototypical hero, right? That's why everyone loves Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a gangly, kind of like nerdy kid growing up, that was something that, I was really drawn to and I could identify with. But, like a lot of people out there, I did the thing where you sell all your comics when you're like 13 years old because you become too cool for comic books and things like that, right? You need to make quick cash. So sold my comics, but I got back into collecting, a few years back. And it was just one issue, picking up a Batman story that I read it and I remembered like why I loved these comics and these stories that just leave you on these cliffhangers that, you keep going to the comic book shop like, is the next issue out? In fact, and so it started kind of a journey for me of rebuying all these things that I sold off when I was a kid, starting with the stories that I remember just walking down to the comic book shop. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, Hightstown, and there was a comic book shop, in town that I would walk down and pick up the latest Spider-Man. It was that Blood Brothers kind of clone saga storyline with Ben Reilly back in the day when he first takes on like the Spider-Man mantle. So that was the first one I really remembered reading. So it was the first, series I bought. And then we're out with my son at a vintage market. There's a comic book, Maximum Carnage. All right, got to pick up Maximum Carnage. Got to read this again. And so it really got me just back into that love of characters and of story. And from there, it got me into learning so much about kind of the changes that had happened over, the last 20 years since the last time I'd collected, from graded, comic books, those options, what people were looking for. And I just slowly kind of grew as a collector, I guess you could say, from just being strictly a reader to being, kind of an art advocate to, collecting some graded slabs myself to having this, kind of moment where I was like, hey, I'd really love to celebrate some of these things that I have stuck away in boxes and stuff. And now, just a few years later, we have this whole company and an amazing, community of collectors that we've gotten to work with, and I get to live vicariously through some amazing collections. So that's always cool too.
Yes, man, that is fantastic. I see a lot of parallels in your story to mine as well. I was a huge Spider-Man guy when I was growing up, and everything to me related to Spider-Man. So it was like, oh, okay, Daredevil, that's Spider-Man's friend. Kingpin, oh yeah, he fought Spider-Man in this issue. So everything was like the 6 degrees of Spider-Man. So everything related to that character, and I think branched out from there. And I had that same period like you did, where it was like middle school, high school. All right, I'm getting into sports and girls, and we'll put away the comic books. But when I got drawn back in, it was really the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie that kind of pulled me back in.
Okay.
But I was like, yeah, what's been happening over the last 20 years or however long it's been? And I want to know I want to catch up with all these characters. So I kind of had the same situation as you, but I've never really had a great display option for my comics. you
Mhm.
have either your on the shelf, you have like your collections, your trade paperbacks, your hardcovers, and you're looking at the spines of each one. And the single issues, they're always kind of bagged and boarded and put away in a box. So I've never had that display option available to me. So uh, when Crafty Comics came on my radar, I was like, oh, this is a high quality option for displaying comics, and I hadn't seen that before. So can you kind of talk about your journey with Crafty, the origin of Crafty Comics, and then how that kind of came about in your from your standpoint?
Yeah, totally. And so it was just honestly a completely organic thing that happened when my wife, she would not let me display these on the wall. It was during COVID quarantine of 2020, and I was home like everyone else, and I was looking to stay busy, and I wanted to start displaying some of my comic books, but she wouldn't let me put that frame up on the wall. She said it looked cheap because of the plastic. And I brought that problem to my friend and my boss at my main job at the time, to Jen Jacobellis. And I said, hey, look, you're really good. You've got this laser that you've been doing some wood cutting of, home decor things and these kind of crafting things. Could you make me a frame for some of my comic books? Because really the options that when I went online, it was either I could go the cheap plastic route, which my wife had already, nixed, or I could try to go to a local framer, and it was, professionally framed. It's glass. It's very matte heavy. It's very expensive. There's a turnaround time. And so in talking to Jen, she cut the first prototype for one of our frames, like that same day, I think, that we had brought the problem to her. And she had a really interesting way of using just a layered design to create not only depth, which is really important for, holding that comic book, the idea that there shouldn't be any pressure put on it. But with some of the other solutions, here's another one that, my wife wouldn't let me put up on the wall. Again, these like plastic ones, right? They got the single hanging mounts, right? Comic books with spines, they're never equal. Okay. So it's always or worst case, I live in California. It's a lot of earthquakes. Got to be earthquake, right? So the idea was that there's just all these problems that I encountered, and in talking to Jen, she was able to come up with a design that was really innovative. It solved those problems, but from an aesthetic point of view, it was beautiful and customizable. And we kind of posted it to Instagram just to see what would happen. And from there, people reached out. They wanted to see if they could order it. They wanted to see if there were different styles or sizes available. And so during that COVID quarantine, we were just from, a garage and starting out with a small laser, just kind of cutting these things and growing based on what collectors were looking for. We went from our raw comic book frame to our graded display case, because there were a lot of collectors who had the CGC and CBCS slabs who said, hey, this has the same problem. I love these things, but they sit in a box, but I'm worried about light damage. Okay, so we looked at the museum quality acrylic, and it's 99% UV protected. So, we really tried to take into account what I, as a collector, was important to me, but also what we were hearing and feedback from people. Like they'll even know we've changed part of the design of some of our most popular products based on one person pointing out something that we went, that's right, that would make it better. Let's go ahead and kind of implement that, right? Because we don't want to just stick to how it's always been done. We're always looking to do it a little bit better. And because we have our own in-house manufacturing with our laser, and now we've grown from a laser, the size, to now something that's the size of my dad. It's 10 feet long, each giant sheets of acrylic and wood into it. And that was really all possible based on just collectors and who are experiencing the same problem that I have of wanting to share the story of their collections, but didn't want to mail it away. They didn't care about a grade or anything like that. They just wanted to preserve it. They wanted to celebrate it. And we wanted to make that experience really as customizable as possible, to make it, because everyone's collection is really unique, and we wanted to help them express that uniqueness however they could.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And like I said, I've never had one before, but I was very fortunate to get sent the frame, and like you said, very customizable. Being able to change the color, the background, and just make it look the way that I want it to look. I thought this was a fantastic option. It got hanging things on the back, or holes on the back where you can hang it and mount it either sideways or vertical. And I just think this looks fantastic. And I think I have the same type of wife that you do, where she doesn't want it to look necessarily cheap. She wants something that looks nice, and I think this is perfect. So I'm over the moon about this. So I want to tell as many people as possible as I can about these Crafti comic frames, and I'm very excited about this. I decided to put my Saga issue in here because Saga is my current favorite comic. Brian K. Vaughan is my favorite writer of all time, and I think this book is fantastic. Have you had a chance to dive into Saga?
I haven't yet. No, that's one of the series that, I haven't picked that one up. I'm really into, like we were talking earlier, like anything by James Tynion.
Yes.
I'm actually, I picked up a bunch of Planet of the Apes, like Boom Studios recently in some dollar bin stuff, but 8 billion genies, Department of Truth. I think even some of the stuff by Jeff Johns right now, and like the Junkyard Joe, kind of that universe, the Geiger universe, is really cool stuff. I'm like the storytelling in some of these indie series and just the world building. I feel like it's one of those things after you read the comic, the first issue, and you're like, I see this world that they're building. Even if not enough has happened in the first issue, like Berserker, for example, that you see the world that they're building, and you're like, okay, I'm down to see where this ride goes.
Yes. I need to move some of those up on my list. The Jeff Johns stuff in particular. I've had it. Like I've been collecting the issues, but I haven't had a chance to read them yet. So I just am going off of his name of, I've liked Jeff Johns stuff in the past, but I haven't had a chance to dive in. And the Berserker stuff, the Keanu Reeves, I just saw John Wick 4 a couple nights ago, and one of the best action movies I've seen. But I'm loving all the stuff, all the indie stuff that's coming out right now. Is I think this is a really great time to be a fan of all these indie books, because you have the Marvel and the DC stuff. You got the Image, which Image on its own has, like, they've carved out their own section, but there's a lot of strong indie studios coming out right now. So I'm right there with you. Anything that James Tynion puts out, it's like when I see his name, I immediately pick it up. I don't think I've been let down by anything that he's put out. So that's fantastic, man. But yeah, like I said, I'm loving the just the different options that you have. Can you talk about all of the various formats that you have at Crafti Comics, like for different people?
Yeah, so you kind of see my wall behind me is an example of some of the customizable options. We've got, light wood, we've got our acrylic backing, we've got black borders, we've got red borders, blue, yellow. There's 20 plus different design combinations really for each of our modern frames. And we now make frames for modern comics through the golden era sizes. Our largest frame is the 11 by 17, and that's our most recent one. Again, due to collector demand. So it's one of those things, we develop products based on once enough people ask us via Instagram or email, kind of, are you going to do something like this? We'll cut a prototype. We'll see what happens with it. But the 1117 has been a really popular option because, again, it's those art prints you pick up from cons and different cool things that they just end up in a pile, because that 1117 is kind of a weird size for getting frames from Target or Walmart or something. And our 1117, it's an all acrylic design with these stainless steel mounts. So it's minimal. Just part of our, philosophy here is we want to emphasize the artwork, right? We don't want anything that distracts from it. Everything the choice should go into is to just accentuating that or the experience itself. And so we've got wall mounted options. Even the treasury sizes is one of our more fun ones, because those treasury books, it's the grading companies won't even take them based on the size. And so we have a ton of collectors. The artwork in those is amazing, both back and front, and they'll create really cool wall displays with some of those old treasuries. But really my favorite thing that we just came out with, because, probably for the past year, we've had collectors asking us, are you guys going to make a label, for the comic slab, And personally, I've never really been a fan of the design of those graded slabs or labels because, again, it distracts from the book. The first thing you see when you look at them is the number or the shiny holograms, or like it's everything but the book. But we still, in talking to collectors, understood the reasoning behind it, and that's because they want to preserve what it is. They want to help communicate that, for future generations. It's really about the experience of it, even down to like signature witnessing,
Yes.
right? How do you authenticate some of that? And so with one of our new products here, I'll show you here is, and I have it integrated into our slab right here. So this is one of our X slabs. This is one of my favorite comics that, shout out to my mom if she's watching this, who picked this up at a yard sale for me. This like Doom 96, right?
Nice.
This is our all acrylic. It's museum quality acrylic. It's shatter resistant. It's 99% UV protected. And all of our slabs come with a display stand too. So not only can you protect the book, but you can instantly pop it up on your desk like me, shelf. I have my IKEA cubbies over here too. But with this one, the new edition is with that Crafti curator. It's this little tag right here that's serialized. And check out what happens now when I just take my phone and I kind of hold it up to this curator right here, right? I don't need a special app to link this or anything like that, but I do have to unlock my phone. But if I scan this right here, and I had just done this a second ago, there we go. What it does, and these are completely customizable. So I've just brought up a digital version of this comic book. So after I slab the book, I can still read through it, right?
Oh, nice.
That's the biggest concern that a lot of people who are against slabbing, they say, well, once it's in the plastic or the acrylic, like we have here, I can never read it again. But now you can. You can tamper-proof it, because our curators come with the tamper-proof seals as well. So you can rest assured that that book is going to be perfectly preserved while you display it, but you can still read it. And these curators, I just showed you an example of how I linked the digital version of the comic, but you could link a PDF of the certificate of authenticity. Like my Dan Slott that I have back here, I had done with videos to the signing from Dan Slott, right? So what better way to authenticate an experience or to preserve that story of your collection, right? How you came across it, than with our new Crafti curator. It's just a small type and completely encased in there too, in acrylic. But it's something that you can program, make your own, and lock it, or you could do it multiple times again and again. And my favorite way that I've talked to people on how they interpret it, a dynamic link to eBay sold listings, right? So one of the things is, how do I tell my future generations, if God forbid I walk out of here and get hit by a bus, that this is a pretty cool comic that they shouldn't sell for like the cover price of the comic book, right? Now they can just scan our Crafti curator and it will take you to the eBay sold listings where you see everything that's sold for, and it keeps up to date without you having to do anything. So think of this as our way of creating a digital label experience, but pairing experiences and online content to physical collectibles.
That is fantastic. And that is something that I think it really feels like the future. It feels like this is not, your dad's comic book collecting. Like, this is putting it into the modern era, incorporating your smartphone. Everyone's got a smartphone, so everyone's attached to their smartphones these days. And having that NFC technology, that's just fantastic. It just unlocks so many possibilities. You named off many great ways to do it right there. So that's something, to me as a tech guy, like I'm into a lot of technology and stuff. So that, for me, automatically, I actually saw your YouTube video where you were showcasing that, and I was like, oh wow, that's fantastic. So that's one feature that I'm also like, I just want to tell everybody, like, look at this, go look at this. So that's great. How did you come up with that? Like, where was the genesis behind that idea?
Yeah, so really it was, we had done a prototype of trying to do a label, of
Hmm.
trying to do here, how can we insert something acrylic where it says what it is and people could customize it in any ways. But at the end of the day, it looked like what everyone else was trying to do. And it was someone in our office that actually brought to my attention the NFC tags. And we kind of looked at the technology, what was the capability of it, and sourcing a quality manufacturer. And then also, again, thinking of the details, right? Because having the technology is one thing, but how do you make sure it doesn't make physical contact with the collectible? How do you make sure there's no Newton rings? Yeah, I posted a video in our first run of the ones that we received in the original design that we were about to ship out. We noticed when you put it together, because the prototype that we received was a fraction of a millimeter shorter, the ones that we had received were creating Newton rings when people put them together. But instead of just pushing it out there and having people like deal with it or get over it or send it back or whatever, we said, okay, how can we create depth to solve this problem? And so we had to end up adding an additional layer of acrylic to the design. But, again, we hope that's just an example of how we really take a collector's first mindset in how can we make this the best possible version of itself that it can be. And our long-term goal is we want to decentralize this whole kind of comic preservation experience, and allow people to do it themselves, because nowadays we have a lot more, like you said, technology and tools at our disposal that people in 1999 didn't have when this became kind of a need, because there was a lot of fake memorabilia out there. And, people were looking for, hey, I want kind of peace of mind. I want that certainty. But now you've got social media groups where you can go for other people's opinions. You've got eBay sold listings. You have an infinite numbers of photos, thousands available at your fingertips, where you can judge for yourself whether something looks authentic, what's the quality of it, and all of those other elements. And really, I look at, because I'm in a lot of those social groups, and I really do read people's stories and experiences, even if I'm not having them myself. But it felt like the whole collecting community was getting towards this place where all these unboxing things were poor experiences. And everyone was just waiting for disappointment or to complain or to, and really like amazing books that they had that I would be super jealous to have in any condition. They were like, oh, look at this one, and like tossing it away because it like was 0.2 numbers down from what they were expecting. And I'm like, do you not understand what it was like when we were kids, when you just wanted the book because it was a cool thing?
Yes.
And I wanted us to get really back to that, and this whole kind of sense of ownership of, well, I don't need you to tell me it's cool. I know it's cool. And I don't need you to tell me the value of it. I think it's valuable. And here's how I'm going to really, personalize this to make it even more unique.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. So I want to encourage everyone to check out Crafti Comics. I'll have all the links in the show notes down below. Also, Dan, I'm a sucker for rewards stuff. So anytime there's like a punch card when I go out to a place or some type of loyalty thing, I'm always like the first one to sign up. And I noticed that you got a loyalty reward page on Crafti Comics, things like your birthday, signing up and just purchasing things. That is a cool thing that I like, as just me personally. I like all kind of reward stuff, so that's cool as well. Is there any anything coming up in the future that you're excited about for Crafti, as well as products or any type of things that you're going to be integrating coming up?
Yeah. So where do I start? So probably the number one thing I'm most excited about right now is we've been getting a lot of requests from, again, going back to decentralizing this and really giving people power. We are going to be working with more artists, with more pressers, with more local comic shop owners. The idea is that with our slabs, with our frames, you can create and become your own quote unquote grading company. You can create your own experiences, and we want to work with artists to have different tiers of their exclusive comics. So instead of them just having a comic and it's on their website and then here's the graded and here's the kind of that process, what if these artists had their own exclusive slabs where one version was the slabbed exclusive in, the display like I'm seeing here, but maybe the next version up from that is our curator, where it links to an exclusive video of the artist doing that artwork, or maybe it even has a shout out. Right? Maybe you scan the curator and it's Todd McFarlane saying, "Hey, Vactor-Verse, what's up? This is Todd McFarlane here." Right? Like, what's the value of those experiences? And I think when artists can tap into that themselves, because really at the end of the day, it's artists and writers, in my opinion, that create the value of these. It is not a third-party company's opinion that's subjective at best that adds value. It is the art, it is the storytelling, it's those experiences. If I can manufacture things that help give artists and writers that power to create their own kind of ongoing models and experiences for their audiences, fantastic. Same thing with pressers, right? As opposed to pressing a book, sending it off. Like, what if you could have a page by page overhead video walkthrough of that book that shows you every detail, and the presser explaining the flaws, and that is tied to the curator. Right? I don't need a number to tell me the condition of something if I can literally watch someone with 30 years of experience going through page by page. All the way to, I have I have a handprint for my son on a blank comic book cover. And for any parents out there, I always recommend that it's a great way to get the family involved in comic books and things, get some blank covers, have your kids do some artwork or do handprints, footprints, date it, frame it, display it. But I have that book linked to a video of, from when my son was first born. So there's really no right or wrong way to do this. And I think that's where sometimes people are looking, there's only one way to do it, right? You have to do it that way. And no, we want to help people see the other side, which is the infinite possibility. If you can use your creativity. That's why I'm super excited that our first batch of the curators are finally now shipping over here, because I want to get them in people's hands to see how else they interpret this technology and see what they curate and display.
Man, dang, that's really exciting. And that's something that, like I said, as a tech guy and as a comics guy, you're merging those two worlds together. I think Marvel and DC have been trying to do this for a while. They've had different Marvel has some AR stuff back in the day that you point your phone at an AR code and videos pop up and stuff like that. But nothing's really caught on to the point where it's a mainstream, like it becomes a mass adopted thing. So I'm always interested to see what is the next thing, what's the next technology, and this the curator NFC stuff. I think this is fantastic. This is perfect. Like you said, you can customize it, you can make it what you want. It doesn't have to be a set thing it's only this. It can never be anything else. So yeah, this is just fantastic stuff. Yeah, I'm very happy that you're able to join us today and that Crafti Comics exists. I want everybody to check out crafticomics.com. Like I said, I'll have all of the links down in the show notes. These are some fantastic stuff for collectors and for anybody who just wants to display some of this great comic book artwork that we have. And even like Dan said, if you have a memory that you want to tie to it, you have a family thing, or you want something just for a display, this is a great option. Like I said, I cannot be happier than I am right now with my Saga. I'm going to switch out my Saga issues as they come out, but I'm just over the moon for these slabs, Dan. So thank you again for joining us today in the Vactor-Verse. I cannot be more pleased to have you here today, sir.
No, I appreciate you having me, and can't wait to see. You can swap out the border colors, the books, all that really easily. So keep sending me pictures, and I'll share them to our fan gallery. And if anyone ever has ideas, suggestions, things they're looking to display, please message us. We're always looking to connect with collectors.
Yes, that is fantastic. So like I say, each and every time on the Vactor-Verse, Dan loves comics, and you should too.
That's right.